I hate that I still love Pokémon Go. As a true gamer, this franchise stands against everything I hold dear. Making me go outside? Making poor animals fight each other? Making me interact with women? Oh, the horror! Then just as I think I can break free from the clutches of the game, Niantic is there to dangle an apple in front of my face and suddenly I'm dragged right back in. In all honesty, Pokémon Go has changed a lot over the course of the last 8 years, and that's where I come in, to tell you whether or not I think this game still holds up and how to become a Pokémon master yourself. The answer to the first question is yes. On to the second half of the video. The main goal of every Pokémon game hasn't changed since the earliest release in 1996. To catch them all. Trouble is, the Pokemon Company's been pandering a bit too hard to the furry community and pulled in Argentina. The Pokemon count inflated over the years from the original 151 to over 1,000. With almost 840 being in Pokemon Go at the time of this recording, that leaves a lot of ground to cover. Let's just jump into the base game so I could explain how we turn nature's little friends into victims. Basically, the player character is dropped into Cyberpunk Google Maps, only instead of being drowned in pop-up ads, these little guys show up, as long as you don't live in the middle of nowhere or the Middle East. God knows they have enough going on there already. Just imagine the damage that would be done if they had funny birds flying around. This bird in particular is called a Pidgey, and he's probably one of the first Pokemon you would find. Like most other Pokemon, he could be found wandering around the map, and you could try to capture it by tapping on him. Unless you don't. You see, each Pokemon has something called a catch rate, basically the chance of any one Pokeball working. If this was on a scale of 1 to 100, a 100 would be something like a Weedle, which is so pathetic it literally has no chance of fighting back. On the other hand, Galarian Moltres would be the 1 to make me Explosion Green Screen Effect 2 in real life. Wait, what? Luckily for anyone around me, there are ways of boosting these odds. A Great Ball and then an Ultra Ball are just straight up upgrades to the previous types. Similarly, there are 3 kinds of berries that further boost these odds. You could get both Pokeballs and berries really consistently from Pokestops, which, if you didn't know, usually spawn around points of interest, like a gazebo, clock, or a weird rock pile if you live far away enough from civilization that would be the most interesting thing around you. Really makes you reconsider your stance on racism when taking down a Confederate statue gets in the way of your berry picking. Speaking of racism, the color of the circle around a Pokemon indicates how difficult it is to catch, with green being the easiest and red the hardest. Landing a hit inside the circle gives you a bonus to your catch rate, which is even more substantial if you hit a curveball. Whenever you catch a Pokemon, you get candy fruit species that can be used to evolve it. Of course, if it were that simple for every Pokemon, this game wouldn't have lasted so long. Finding an Onix outside of an event is about as rare as finding a real snake in New York, and seeing a Dratini is rarer than finding someone who is actually happy to live in New York. Even worse, Niantic's opinion on segregation. Sure, America can keep Taurus and Throw, but God forbid a Salk wanders in from Europe and all of a sudden Niantic is there with the deportation papers. This was meant to encourage trading, as most people can't afford to travel all around the globe just to catch their favorite furry art, but the company neglected to consider that most Pokemon players don't have a friend within 5 miles, let alone 500. To make up for this, Niantic runs frequent events where certain Pokemon spawn much more frequently. These are Spotlight Hours, where the game turns into a raid battle with your house being the boss, Community Days, where once a month a certain Pokemon has their albinism odds boosted to 1 in 30, and larger scale events that can last for months at a time. Ironically, there are so many events that it's more likely than not you'd be playing with altered rates at any given time, and the consequences are mixed. The most recent event is for the Year of the Dragon, and I mean, yeah, I want a dragon, but a turtle thing? Have I really spent years on this game for this? Yes. There's one other kind of Pokemon that can only be caught through battles: legendaries. Raids are the most direct way, but you can also occasionally catch a legendary Pokemon by winning 3 out of 5 matches in the Pokemon Go Battle League. The process of training a Pokemon for battle is the same whether it's a Mewtwo or a Pidgey, so let me explain with an example. This here is another Pidgey, a tiny little Scrungly who happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Here's how I would make him a star. There are 2 stats which determine the strength of a Pokemon: IVs, or individual values, and CP. I cannot stress enough that CP does not mean what you think it means, unless we're talking about Mr. Mime, in which case I'm not so sure. Combat power is based on the base stats of a Pokemon, which can be influenced in two ways. Every Pokemon has innate base stats, which can't really be changed except for a minor boost based on individual values. These come in the form of attack, defense, and HP, with a bar indicating how strong they are in a particular stat. For the most part, these stats have a minor effect. After all, the difference between a 3 and 4 star Pidgey isn't enough to keep it out of the deep fryer. The most important stat is the CP of a Pokemon, as that determines what leagues they could battle in. The Great League limits Pokemon to under 1,500 CP, the Ultra League to 2,500, and the Master League to Mewtwo and the people who spend way too much time on this game. If we want our Pidgey to shine, we need to decide what league to shoot for. By looking up usability rankings, we can actually see that Pidgey's evolution, Pidgeot, is actually really good in Ultra League. After sacrificing a ton of small animals for candy, we can evolve our Pidgey twice. Then use the remaining candy to power up the CP rating of Pidgeot as close to 2,500 as possible. So is that it? Time to throw it into battle? No! Because without the right moves, our little bird would be less effective than if I had just brought a can of Raid bug spray. The first step is to unlock a second charged move with even more candy. The trouble is, some Pokemon have upwards of 5 fast moves and 7 charged moves to choose from. So which do you go with? Whatever this website I mentioned recommends. Seriously, I am not trying to start a debate between energy per second or damage per second when I still don't even know what a turn is. If you do, feel free to put your essays in the comment section. If you don't, just make something up. I like reading the comments, and it would be funny to see real answers interwoven between whatever fanfiction y'all could come up with. So now is our little bird finally ready to fly? No, because I have a better one that's shiny, so into the trash it goes. Our better bird still has a chance to shine, though. The first thing to consider is typing. For the most part, it's straightforward. Water beats fire, fire beats grass, grass beats water. Just expand that principle to 16 different types and give almost every Pokemon a combination of 2, just in case it wasn't confusing enough already. In the mainline series, type synergy between a team is less important, because when you could bring up to 6 Pokemon into a fight, who cares if you have 2 water types? On the other hand, Pokemon Go only allows 3 Pokemon, meaning if you don't diversify, your entire team could be run through by a funny rock. Still, it might be worth keeping Pokemon of the same type around for another aspect of Pokemon Go, raids. They range in difficulty from 1 to 6 stars, with increasingly difficult raid bosses. 1 to 3 star raids are basically free for anyone of moderate strength, unless you follow the recommended trainer count, in which case you just need functioning eyes and hands. Optional. The real interesting fights are 5 and 6 stars, with 5 being the main way of catching legendary Pokemon, and 6 stars being an easy way to get Mega Pokemon. Legendary Pokemon should be self-explanatory. They have some of the strongest stats in the game and generally dominate high-level battles. Except this one, and this one, and, well, this one isn't even in the game yet, but it's a literal berry, so I assume when it comes out I could just step on it. Mega Pokemon are a bit more special. Usually you can only evolve a Pokemon 2 times, but someone at Game Freak had the genius idea to make worse Pokemon better, by allowing them to temporarily evolve a 3rd time. Sure enough, this helped forgotten Pokemon like Lopunny actually become pretty good, and then they said screw it and threw glowing rocks at every Pokemon that was already dominant. Thankfully, we don't have to deal with the personification of nuclear bombs in trainer battles, since Megas are banned from participating in most of them anyway. Instead, the way Mega Evolution works is that once you get enough energy from Mega Raids, you can Mega Evolve your Pokemon for 8 hours, which, on top of being useful in raids, gives you more candy per catch. The best part is, once you Mega Evolve once, you don't need to use any more Mega Energy, so long as you wait for the rest period to end. So let's say you followed all my instructions. You raised up your little Pidgey to a Pidgeot, did the same with 2 other Pokemon with unique types that complement it well. Is it finally time for you to be able to start winning some battles? Not really, because the metagame shifts so often and more Pokemon are being added so frequently that, for all I know, by the time this video comes out, the most dominant Pokemon could be a funny little caterpillar called Squiggly. Overall, Pokemon is still good. It's definitely not for everyone, but I like it. It's just something that you could do while you're on walks to help you get more active. And that's certainly something. Scott the Woz is on the Epstein list.
What the fuck?
I'm like established now, you know, like you gotta pump up your editing game to like accommodate to my style, man. Like you better open this video up with me like emerging from the depths of hell, like I'm crawling my way into the screen. Improv right now, like I'm coming out of hell. I'm like, fat balls, help me please.
Sounds to me like you want to edit this yourself.
You know, maybe we could just... I'll just slide in from the left.
See, I know you're lying because it wasn't.
Wait, I got one. What did the chicken... Why did the chicken cross the road?
Why would he do that?
Eggs! I just knew I was gonna yell egg. Oh no, the video's over. This is so sad that you can't hear me anymore. Unless you click on this video here where I explain the lost Mario game, Mario 14.